This is CRM Audio, the Microsoft Business Applications Podcast with George Dubinsky, Joel Lindstrom, and Sean Tabor. Welcome to a special CRM Audio. Why is it a special episode? It's because George and Sean are at the MVP Summit and I'm not. But I brought a replacement. Stephan Smith.
Hey, how's it going? Yes, I'm more than happy to step in.
Great.
All right.
So, a question that I've had several conversations around and some personal experiences lately is around learning new stuff. It seems like it's a recurring thing, like you just can't reach a level where you know everything you need to know now.
No.
There's always new stuff you need to learn.
A lot.
So, how about we talk about when you find yourself in that situation? What do you do? How do you learn? How do you figure out what you should study? And how do you get yourself to the level of proficiency you want to be?
Yes.
So I'll give you my recent experience. I had a necessity to get into field service mobile. And field service is the one part of the Microsoft Business Application platform that I haven't done that much about. I've worked with some customers that have field service, but I've never led a deployment, let alone the mobile part of it, which is based on Resco. So, so in doing that, I kind of got thrown in, and I had taken the Dynamics Learning Portal content about field service mobile, and I had installed it on my phone, but I never got it. But it wasn't until I worked with a client, actually had a thing to work with, where it started clicking. I figured out where the profiles were and how to set the profiles and the forms and views and things like that. So I guess big thing for me is that underscores when I went to the class or when I watched the training, because I wasn't using it in a realistic context, it just kind of fell out of my brain.
You're right. You're not using it, so therefore your brain said, chuck this stuff.
So let's say, Stephen, you needed to learn something, again, just pulling some out. Say you need to get better at Microsoft Flow. How would you approach that? As someone who has been a trainer and somebody who does training, what would you do? My
first go-to, just to kind of get familiar with the topic, is YouTube. There's a lot of different training out there on YouTube, ranging from the useless to fairly useful videos out there, but there's a lot of content, especially when Microsoft started putting Ignite and all those other sessions on YouTube. That makes it pretty convenient for me, other than having to watch all those commercials and skip all that stuff. But that's my first go-to usually for a lot of things. How do you though, if you don't have any exposure to something using, again, Flow, and you search for Microsoft Flow, you'll find a bunch of different videos of various qualities. Yes,
you won't know where to start.
That's the challenge.
How do you know where to start? And I've wasted entire days or weeks almost searching for an answer with Power Apps and finding a bunch of videos that were just flat out wrong or outdated.
Well, when it comes to learning something brand new, I resort to going to YouTube and trying to find, for example, Microsoft sourced content like the Ignite sessions or Build or whatever. I'll also go to Channel 9, which has a lot of stuff, but Channel 9 tends to seem to be a little Azure heavy as opposed to other things. Like I don't know that Channel 9 actually has a lot of Flow content.
I don't know.
I don't think it does, actually. It's very Azure heavy or developer heavy as well. But like I said, YouTube is definitely one place I go. Now, of course, there's Microsoft Learn, but Microsoft Learn even seems to be more Azure heavy, but they're coming out with a lot of new content on other topics.
Yeah.
But also the partner portal, the partner website, whenever they do have content that's put out, but I've not been completely impressed with that content.
Yeah, and the DLP and the CustomerSource are shutting down.
Oh,
yeah.
Really?
So PartnerSource and CustomerSource are going away, and so we'll put links in the show notes for this, but you got now Open EDX and Microsoft Learn,
right?
And the challenge is for the new certification exams. If you want to get certified, OpenEDX is the place to go because it corresponds to the courseware for the exam. Whereas Learn is more if you are, say, an admin or somebody, a user of this platform, maybe not as in-depth as getting certified, but it's got good content on that as well. And there is, you're right, Learn started with Azure and has since grown, and there is a number of more business applications content on it. But again, as I'm giving people advice on my team about I need to get ready if I got this project coming up where I'm going to have to use Power Apps. How do I learn this? Definitely EDX is a good place for that, Power Platform, as well as the other content for the certification exams.
And you actually used EDX when you were learning Power Apps, right?
Yeah, the EDX course on Power Apps is actually pretty good. As is the EDX course on Power BI as well. Is a pretty good introduction to that. But again, I think where I see people struggle for that is they're going to the class, they're going through it, but they're not really using it. For especially technology, you have to use it in a real world scenario.
Right, and that's basically how you end up really learning because at least learning in a practical sense, practical application always is going to help you as opposed to just the book knowledge. But just having a fundamental understanding of what the capabilities are definitely give you a reference point when you do get hands-on. And that's most of the content that's out there tends to be more of that kind of fundamentals, but nothing that really goes in depth. That's been my challenge with anything is, for example, like you go on the partner portal and it's more about the features. Here's a feature X and this is what it does, but there's really no content on here's when you use it and why, So that's always a challenge. You kind of
isn't that always the challenge of a platform company like Microsoft?
It is
because they can tell you what you can do, like the art of the possible, but they don't always do a great job of telling you why and in what context you should do certain things.
Right, and that makes sense because they're not the practitioners of the platform. They're the builders. It's like when a contractor builds your house. They're not necessarily the experts in how you should arrange your furniture. They're just there to build the house and give you the place to live. And so that's naturally, something you would expect, but it is a little bit hard because, a lot of the actual practical application has to be done in a live environment where there's real bullets flying around. So it would be cool if there was something that gave you a little bit more, but for now, that's what we have to deal with. That's the world. Like when I first started, YouTube wasn't even a good option. The only thing that I could find was some videos from David Yak, for example, was my first online kind of entry into the platform. And then there was books, I read a lot of books.
Yeah.
CRM 4.0, all that great stuff. And
did you ever read the CRM Field Guide?
So the field guide was so big.
Wasn't that email router chapter awesome?
Yes, it was.
I wrote that.
That was the best chapter, actually. Yeah, and but I actually used the field guide more as a reference. So, like, if I needed to know more about a specific feature, I would go to the field guide over like some of the other books that were out there. Definitely.
Right, and just so you know, Matthew Whitteman's CRM 2011 Bible is now available for $8 on eBay.
It does make for a great cup holder. Actually,
I've seen several places around here that have those books as monitor stands. Have you seen the rooms around Hitachi, the offices that people want to lift up their desk? What better than a 500-page manual to do that?
Yeah, so those are great ones. In fact, I remember when Matthew was working on that book, he was a little disgruntled about the fact that by the time the book was published, some of the stuff was out of date already. So it's like, I guess that's
one of our other colleagues wrote a book about Power BI, and when he the week before it was published, they changed the background color, so all the screenshots were wrong.
Oh no. Yeah, that's rough.
So you decided you want to learn something. You found your courses, but I guess the other thing that's just kind of overwhelming people that I see people kind of stuck is there's so much I need to learn. What do I need to learn? What should I focus on? What should I not focus on? Because I think there's that tendency with new stuff. You're kind of worried, well, what if this is the next social engagement and Microsoft changes their mind? Or people that had been, let's say Project Service, PSA. If you've seen the news, Microsoft is going a different direction with PSA and kind of combining it with Project Online and moving away from the PSA solution that we have in Dynamics. And I think your service podcast is going to have some more about that. So if I had invested weeks of my time to learn PSA, I'd probably be feeling a little bit put out there.
That's part of the challenge as Microsoft kind of wades through the water and finds their way. PSA kind of came around before the Project Online team really was kind of engaging. Mm-hmm. It seemed like they were already going in that direction, but since they weren't there, they ended up building that functionality out in Dynamics. But hopefully what you learned on PSA will translate somewhat to Project Online, but I guess we'll find out.
Right. And I think you just gotta look at kind of the way the world is going, and so you can see based on look at conferences Microsoft has. What do they have the most sessions about? They've got things about Power Apps. They've got things about field service, customer service. There's a lot of investment going on in those areas. And so from a business applications perspective, that's how I would gauge it. And also if you work as somebody who implements systems, looking at what is being adopted by the people in your industry. You don't necessarily have to be the bleeding edge first person to use something. But I would say things like Power Apps and Flow are well enough mature now and adopted by thousands of companies out there that you can be pretty sure they're not going to go away tomorrow.
Well, that Power Apps and Flow are pretty hardcore stuff. So yeah, there's nothing like it. So that's definitely bread and butter right there. But yeah, you're right. It can be a little challenging when certain technologies kind of end up getting the boot and being switched out. But, yeah.
And so then the other thing I see a lot of people, I'm talking about people I mentor on my teams who have a goal. I'm going to get certified on X, or I'm going to learn how to do X so that I know how to use it or how to deploy it, but they never set themselves a deadline.
Yeah, that's a problem because, it's like a dream without a goal. It just, if you don't have a deadline, if you don't have a schedule, then you're not actually serious about doing it, because when you set those things up, then you actually have to, for example, plan out your day. And, one of my tricks for learning something, and I've said this in my blogs, is you got to dedicate at least an hour a day, right? And it doesn't necessarily have to be one contiguous hour. It could be, 30 minutes during your lunch break, or an hour during your lunch break, or 30 minutes over lunch and 30 minutes after or before work or whatever. But like just having that regular, it's kind of like working out, right? It's
but wait, do I have to do an hour every day, or could I do 3 hours twice a week?
I think you can do 3 hours twice a week, but what you're trying to do is establish a habit as opposed to something that you do on an on-off schedule. It's just like working out, right? No one feels like waking up and working out for the first time, right? But if you go anyway, even if you don't have a great workout, you just start to get in that habit, then it becomes a regular routine that you just naturally fall into. And then you can start having better workouts later. But just setting up the initial habit is more important than necessarily the throughput of what you actually do when you're first starting out.
Yeah, and if you're getting certified about something, then you can, I will say, go schedule the exam several weeks before you feel like you're ready, and that way you have that pressure. If it's not a certification, if it's just something you want to learn how to do, set a deadline where you're going to teach somebody how to do it. Like volunteer to speak at your CRMUG chapter about, or user group, or if it's not technology, maybe invite some friends over to teach them how to do this skill,
Yeah.
And by doing that, you have kind of the social pressure. Like, if I'm not ready, I'm really going to be embarrassed. I'm going to look bad. So I'm going to be sure I'm ready. Most of the things I've learned in the last year from business applications have been from that. I sign up for things I don't know how to do. And I mean, don't come to my sessions at CMUG Summit and say, oh, Joel doesn't know how to do that, because by the time you come, I will. And a lot of it I've done before, but I'll add things to it or look at things coming in the roadmap and saying, okay, that sales playbook stuff, I haven't used that yet. So I need to learn that. So I'm going to set up a lunch and learn for inside my company, or put myself on the agenda at the CRMUG South Carolina meeting coming up on April 12th, and I'm going to speak about that.
Well, I'm going to tell you my big secret for doing anything as far as like study-wise and getting up to speed was when I was preparing to go for the interview for Microsoft, right? And I was so scared of being beaten to a pulp by, all the interviews that I was going to do, that I went on. There's a book called Personal Kanban, right? Great book. And
I think they have a website now too.
Yeah, I think so. Now, granted, I'm going to admit I didn't read the whole book. I read like part of the book.
Well, I did read part of that book, and half the book is them talking about how great Personal Kanban is.
Yeah, but I got the gist, right? I said, okay, I'm going to do this. So I was living in an apartment at the time in Charlotte, and I stripped everything off the walls, and I made the walls my Kanban boards. Yeah, and people would come over and they're like, "Are you okay, Steve? Like, is there something going on that we don't
You're like
need to know
the
about?"
crazy guy that has the strings all over
what was
his
the
wall
movie? A Beautiful Mind with what's his name?
that.
Yeah, so I went crazy with it, and what I did was I said, okay, and I also was using Trello.
Yeah,
and I said, okay, I planned out what I wanted to study in advance, and I kind of had a reason why I wanted to study that, and I would basically Kanban all the chapters. Like if it was a book and it was 20 chapters, I'd have a card for each chapter. And as I completed each chapter, I would move it across my Kanban board. You will not believe how effective that was. Now, if you're married, your wife may not let you do this. So maybe you can use Trello, right? But Trello is a great option for that. But I'm telling you, it was so effective because you get that dopamine rush when you complete a chapter and you get to move the card.
So the chapters, were the chapters in a book you were reading? Or
it was either the chapters in a book, or if it was like an online training, I would have the modules as the cards. And as I completed each module, actually, as I started each module, I would move it into my doing category. And then when I would complete it, I'd move it into done. And walking in and having that physical representation on the wall. And I even like the physical more so than the digital, even though the digital is more convenient. But being able to take that card and move it over and say, yes, I'm done, and then see the progress that you're making, very effective, highly effective.
And then somebody turns the ceiling fan on,
and then all your cards blow away, and you go insane and like, no. But no, that was very effective. And I also combined that with so instead of an hour a day, I was doing 3 hours a day. So I would wake up, almost like I was going to work out, but I wasn't working out. I would wake up. My workout was mental, right? I'd do an hour before I'd go to the office, right? So I'd wake up. In fact, I was going to Starbucks, which was right near the office that I was working at the time. And I'd sit there for an hour drinking coffee and just doing my stuff. And then during lunch, I stopped going out to lunch with all the guys. And we had like 2-hour lunches too. And I spent an hour at my desk. I brought my lunch. And then after work, this is before I had kids, I had another hour that I would spend. That was my schedule. And I did that every day. I didn't even do it five days a week. I did it every day for 3 months before I had my interview with Microsoft.
Wow.
So that was I didn't know what they were going to ask me, but I for sure wasn't going to be feeling unprepared when I walked into that interview. And, for better or worse, you could say it worked because they hired me. So, yeah. But not to say that that's what everybody should do when they're learning a new technology. But I think the hour a day thing, it's a commitment, but I think it works. It's effective. If you do an hour a day, even if it's a half an hour on your way to work while you're in the car listening to a podcast, and then another half an hour going back home, even that if you listen an hour a day, that's equivalent to a semester in college over a year, right?
But we're not going to give you any credit.
The credit you're going to get is the satisfaction. Like, so whether your goal is a promotion, getting a new job, whatever, if you maintain that kind of schedule, in 3 years, you will be the best in your field. I didn't make that up. This is a Zig Ziglar quote. And that's actually where I got that from. Was Zig Ziglar? He has a bunch of audio where he talks about, using your car as your school. And it makes a lot of sense. So you could be in your car listening to music or listening to, talk radio or whatever. What is that doing for your career? What is that doing for your life? It's like eating a cake, right, all the time. Not to say you can't listen to that stuff at some point. Yeah, right. It doesn't help you. It's not helping you, progress in your career and your life.
And what you said, I can look at or talk to somebody, again, somebody on my team, one of my mentees, and I can just tell if they're going to get there, in a timely manner. And that's, some people expect to be given everything on a platter.
Yeah.
Tell me what I need to know. Tell me how to learn it. Give me time during work so I can learn it. Where others, like what you just said, find the time. If it's important, you find the time, especially if it's for, advancing your career or getting better at your job. If you're just looking to work on the work you work at work and then do other stuff when you're off and not, that's fine if that's your goals in life. But if your goal is to be better, learn more, you're not going to get there.
Well, and this is why I'm against the new notion of the side hustle, right? And I've blogged about this a little bit, but I don't like the side hustle thing that's going on, the phenomenon. Like people have shows called The Hustle or whatever,
right?
And the reason I don't like it is it's a division of focus, right? So let's say you're a plumber, right, during the day, and then you do yard work after the fact, right? If you're not focusing on being the best plumber and doing everything you can to maybe even start your own plumbing business, you're just working for extra money, but you're using all your time to do other things that aren't going to help you with your main job. So the way I look at it is if you've decided you're going to be a Microsoft consultant or developer or whatever, everything you do should be focused strategically on what you're trying to accomplish. And doing a side hustle that's something else, if you just want extra money, okay, great. Now you can buy, some extra Happy Meals at McDonald's. But what is that doing strategically for your career or your life?
Yeah,
so
good point.
I think if and you spoke to, initiative, right? If I'm given a task on a project and I maybe am not familiar enough with that topic, I'm going to spend the time researching it, starting from fundamentals all the way to practical application, if I can even find that kind of training content. But here's the thing. This is why I think, not to try to brag, but everywhere I've gone, I've eventually risen to the top of the ranks. And I think the real reason is not because I'm so smart or, I'm a genius or anything like that. It's that I take the time to study what responsibilities I have. And whether that's how to present in front of a room or public speaking or whatever it is, I'm constantly reading or watching video or some kind of training that's going to help me be better at that thing. And it takes initiative to take the time and schedule that to do it. But some people, they just want to show up at the job. And like you said, they expect the silver platter to be handed to them. They kind of wait. Those are the same kind of people that when you have a problem on a project, they're the ones that maybe they'll complain, but they won't come up with any solutions. Or they'll wait for someone to tell them what to do, right? It's like whenever I have a project, I listen to what people say and what kind of conversations they're having. The people that complain the most are usually the people not doing anything about the problem. They're just complaining. Or they'll say, oh, well, that's not my job. That's not my job title. Well, I don't care what your job title is. At the end of the day, if the project doesn't go well, we're all going to be in the tank. And usually me as a project lead, I'm taking the tip of the spear
right.
when it comes to that. So if you don't do it, then I'm going to do it. I'm going to figure out how to do it.
It seems like a lot of people in our line of work, not calling anybody in specific, but just general trends, the general career path a lot of people want is, I work hard, I'm a consultant, I do a lot of grunt work, technical work, whatever, but I get to this point where now I'm the bigwig and I'm the visionary and everybody else is doing the technology related work and I'm just kind of setting the vision, and get that sinecure job or whatever you want to call it, where, big sounding title, but then they quickly become technologically irrelevant and stop learning. There's a point where people get in their career where they either get comfortable or they feel like that's beneath me, so I don't need to learn that now. There's developers who can do that stuff. And, in technology, that's dangerous.
I started off my career, I was an employee at a company, and I was in the IT department, software developer. And then I became a consultant. It was kind of a forced career change, so to speak, because I was laid off on that job. So the next day, now granted, I was laid off at that company, but then they said, hey, we need to move headcount, so we're now going to pay you as a consultant. And then that was my start into consulting. But I went to work for one of my former coworkers who had started a company, and we had a very small team. So when I had a problem, everybody else was heads down. So I didn't really, I was in my early 20s at that point. There was a lot of experience I didn't have yet on how to solve problems, but I had to quickly learn how to figure things out on my own because everybody else was pretty much heads down. So that's kind of where, and this is where the Zig Ziglar and, other public speakers like Anthony Robbins and all that kind of came into play. I was listening to a lot of them, but that's how I got my notion of, hey, I'm just going to constantly focus on consuming content that's going to help me, whether it's the business side or the technical side or whatever it is. And I didn't want to wait for someone to help me. It gets, for me, it's irritating that I even have to ask somebody for help sometimes. It's like, I just want to be able to at least, and here's what I do. Before I left Microsoft, the thing that I always tried to do was be conversationally relevant in any specific topic that I was in my domain, right? So even if I wasn't an expert in X, right? If I knew there was a possibility that it was going to come up on a specific project, I would go and do that field research just to at least be able to speak about it. I didn't have to know a deep dive or everything, how it exactly worked. Like, there's a lot of projects where you go and the customer has some weird, wacky platform that we have to integrate with. Well, if that's the case, then
Ping Federate.
Yeah, I had one of those. Yeah. So it's like, whether it's that or, a lot of the IBM technologies in these larger firms, WebSphere or, whatever it is, AS400 stuff. Now, fortunately, I had AS400 experience prior, but like all those things you have to wrap your head around, especially as an architect. So if I walk into a conversation with a business stakeholder and they're like, oh yeah, we're using blah, 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 and this is what we want to do with it. And I'm like, oh, what is that? It doesn't instill confidence in the customer, right? So I always want to make sure that the customer is confident in that I actually know what I'm talking about, even if I can't like deep dive into it with, their technical folks. So that's where that regimen of constant education comes into play. And a lot of people confuse like schooling for education, right? Schooling is not education. Schooling is where you like learn fundamentals about a whole bunch of different topics.
If you do it right, you learn how to learn there. But maybe.
Yeah. But education is not schooling, right? I've met a lot of people who never went to college but were extremely educated. In fact, more educated than even me in certain topics.
Well, check out our podcast episode about being an autodidact.
Oh,
so what do you think about the MOOCs, the massive online courses? Because I found that there's a lot of good content. There's a lot of good ones. I've taken courses on EDX, Coursera, a number of the Pluralsight, a number of these other places. And what I found is with a lot of them have the freemium model where you can audit the course for free, or you can pay, and then if you pay, sometimes you can interact with the instructor, or you can join in class discussions, and usually you get some kind of a certificate, which really realistically doesn't really mean anything.
No, it doesn't.
But I've had several of those courses where I have audited them and haven't finished. I've just kind of watched a few videos. Maybe that's all I want, but I found when I've paid for it, pay the $70 or whatever, I generally finish it.
Oh, well, yeah, so, you have a vested interest
now. Like, it goes back to, what's the value in this? And sometimes if it's not costing me anything but a few minutes, then I don't view it with the same level of seriousness as I do something that I'm actually paying for.
I think it kind of boils down to your core motivation for watching that content, right? If you have to pay for it before you watch it, then it makes me question, well, why are you really watching this? I mean, I understand a lot of stuff that we have to do. It's not because we want to do it. Like, I don't necessarily want to learn some abstract technology that a customer has because I may never see that thing again. But at the same time, like I said, I want to remain at least conversationally aware of the different platforms that I may be dealing with. But as far as the online content goes, places like Pluralsight or Coursera, I think they're good for what they are. But for me, a lot of times, like for example on Pluralsight, right? I frequent Pluralsight a lot, and more recently, I've been using a lot of the LinkedIn Learning stuff simply because I have access to it through my premium membership. But the challenge with Pluralsight and even LinkedIn Learning for me is a lot of times I may just want to consume information that's more like fundamentals or overview, and I have to watch. There's like a 10-hour course on XYZ. I don't want a 10-hour course. I just want to learn some fundamentals. So I kind of wish that it was more layered to where it catered to, okay, here's a overview of what this is and why you should care, to a fundamentals, and then a more intermediate to deeper dive into that technology. It's not really formatted that way. So, and the other thing too with like Pluralsight has courses on everything under the sun. They're not focused on any particular technology. So you may find courses on the thing that you're interested in, but it may be very shallow, right? For example, Dynamics, right? The only real courses on Pluralsight right now for Dynamics is the development course that David Yak created. And Julie has some stuff out there as well. But that's really all Pluralsight has, and a lot of that content is older. But even though it's older, it's still relevant to, like, for example, plugin development, which he had a very thorough course on that. That's the only real, to me, valuable dynamic content even out there on Pluralsight. So,
well, and the funny thing is, if you want to see stuff about core business applications, sales functionality around, say, quotes, for example, most of the newer content focuses on the newer functionality and doesn't cover some of the basics that has been in there for years.
Yes. And it's really hard when someone's feeding you like steak and you haven't even eaten the baby food yet. You kind of need the fundamental concepts before someone starts deep diving on you into specific features. So I think that's missing. Hopefully someone will do something about that at some point in the future. But to me, whenever I learn something, the first thing I do is, if it's not online or if it's a book, I look for a introductory book, because my goal is, number one, an overview of the technology, and then number two, the fundamentals. But I want that without having to watch 50 hours of a course, because a lot of times I just need to learn something fast, and I just want to learn the fundamentals, the basics.
Right.
So,
and that's where, I mean, for at least business applications, you're just there are books out there. I think Sarah Critchley, MVP from the UK, just came out with a Dynamics 365 book. I haven't read it yet, but I saw it. I should get a copy of that. Yeah. But I think for the basic, if you have specific stuff, the Microsoft Docs has gotten pretty good.
Yeah, it has gotten a lot better.
Because I mean, I was trying to set up predictive opportunity scoring the other week, and
fancy.
Usually, and I was kind of nervous because it had just come out, and what I've been used to is sometimes the functionality comes out before the documentation now.
Right,
but in this case, they had really good documentation walking step by step how to do it. They didn't put a lot of screenshots in there because they know that it's going to change. It's going to change, so they don't put a lot of screenshots. But I think they even had a link to a video showing how to do it. So, so that has gotten better. But again, most of that focuses on things released since 2015.
Yeah,
things that were in there before that haven't really changed. It's hard for somebody new starting out to find good basic training information.
It is. It's rough, right? Like I had a blog, a couple months ago where I listed like 50 different places to go to like learn different things. That's unfortunate because it's hard when you have to go to so many different places to basically get up to speed on things. And like you said, there's a lack of content. Right, the Microsoft Docs, as great as it is, it's a great reference, but it's not something you can read like it's a book. It's not there to teach you fundamentals. It's about what is out there already.
And with the move to unified interface, kind of all bets are off. Like I was searching for where is the hierarchy button. When you have a view and you want to see the hierarchy view because a customer that's upgrading to the unified interface couldn't find it, and I couldn't find either, and I searched and I found the instructions, but they were about classic UI. And eventually I found it, but again, I think that's just the nature of where we are. The admin stuff, the stuff that's in the settings menu in the classic UI, now we have the Power Platform Admin Center. It's in different places now, and so if you are new starting out with unified interface, a new environment, a lot of that information may still be dated.
And in that case, you're probably going to have to rely on blogs to blogs are, obviously more faster moving than Microsoft Docs or even courses on Pluralsight or LinkedIn Learning. So a lot of that newer stuff that's kind of more, either not come out yet or just in preview, you're going to have to rely on blogs for that kind of content.
So I guess let's summarize. So in summary, if you want to learn something, give yourself a deadline. Look for an introduction first, maybe a book or something, and then dig in. Set yourself a deadline so that you have a clear date of when you want to do it, and then just commit yourself to doing it.
Yeah, and your why is important, right? You should wake up every day and kind of review your why, for what you're doing that day. That helps to kind of keep your vision. But I think also adding the put bookmark time literally on your calendar for studying.
Make an appointment with yourself.
And the cool thing about that is you set it on private, and then people will think you're in a meeting, right?
People think you're really busy.
And not that everybody cares if you're in a meeting or not. They'll just walk in and talk to you. But I think setting the commitment, setting the deadline, scheduling time with yourself, and figuring out ahead of time what you're going to study will go a long way for actually helping you be productive and actually do what you want to do, say you want to do.
And nothing beats actually doing it.
Yes.
You can go to all the courses you want, but until you open up Visual Studio and do it, or open up that application and do it, you're not going to learn it.
Well, and like I said, that personal Kanban is killer. It works. So even if your friends think you're crazy, go ahead and find some wall space that's empty and your wife doesn't try to, clobber you. Go ahead and put up a little Kanban board, and for every chapter or every module of something you're studying, go ahead and write a little card for that. You can go to Staples and buy like 100 cards for like $3. I like the physical movement of the cards. It gives me that sense of, like I've accomplished something, even if it's just a chapter or whatever, but it works. So,
and if Neil Benson is listening, I think Stephen deserves some kind of a prize for using the principles of Agile in his personal life.
Kanban. Yes, be agile with your education. Yes.
All right, well, this is great. I think maybe we should do another episode. Maybe we should find some people who are currently learning things and find out how they're doing it.
Yeah, that'll be a great thing to just see their thought process of what they're actually doing and what they've found, and see how challenging it is for them to find the content they're looking for. But maybe that can help someone else who's on the same journey.
Yeah, if you're currently studying maybe for a certification exam or studying to learn Power Apps, Flow, something new, drop us a comment and let us know some tips of how you do it. How do you find the time to do it? How do you know what to focus on? And what are you doing to give yourself a deadline to learn it?
And be strategic. Don't just get certification just because it's something you can put on your wall. I interviewed a guy that had 50 certifications once.
Wow.
But he did not know anything about anything because
he probably got the combo deal from Test King.
Yeah, there you go. But yeah, 50 certifications, and most of them had nothing to do with the job he was interviewing for.
SQL 2003.
Yes, he was certified. NT 4.0, network administration.
He hands you his transcript, his Microsoft certification transcript. It's 10 pages long, double-sided.
Yeah. Just the certification section. Yeah. Anyway.
All right. Well, thanks, Stephen.
All right. Thank you.
This has been CRM Audio, the Dynamics 365 podcast. Send us your feedback at voice@crm.audio. Check out our other shows at crm.audio or subscribe on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, TuneIn, and any place else podcasts are offered. This podcast is a production of Dynamics Podcast, LLC.